And we have, this is already being recorded.
Yeah, I started right away because if I don't get back to it, forget about it. We're set.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. We're awaiting members of the agency and we will start as soon as we have a quorum.
Looks like you and I are the only ones in it right now.
1 minute.
Is there any audio on this meeting? I can't hear anything. I don't know whether we're just on mute. This is Richard Wallace.
Yes, Richard, we're waiting for a quorum. John Cody is here. The treasurer is here. Heather Campbell, you're here. I know that Rebecca Wolf was not able to attend. She had a conflict. I know, who else were we waiting for, Lisa?
Cheryl was supposed to join.
Is Cheryl on the call?
What about Paul? I'm not seeing her.
Mayor Johnson
He said he was gonna come, so.
and Tiffany? Here comes the mayor.
Mayor?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. So what I'm having some technical difficulties. This is my second Zoom meeting today that I was unable to go on for whatever reason, and I was clicking from the city's website. We're going to begin our IDA meeting. It is 1:08 p.m. And before we actually start the meeting, I just want to state that we will not, as an agency, take any actions today, but we will listen to this report and find out when is the next planning board meeting so we can schedule our public hearing.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes,
With the,
we will-
we had on the agenda a presentation of the pilot proposal and other incentives requested by the developer. Council had also
Yes,
prepared if the agency decided they did want to take action to authorize a public hearing to review the developer's application and the request for benefits without in any way taking a position on the project itself, but we certainly can delay that at your request till the November 3rd meeting.
yes, I would like that. But we can listen to the presentation. Is that for the packet that we received for the fiscal impact?
Do you need, someone need a link?
Joe says he's
I
not-
got Joe. Joe's on. Thank you.
Thank you for sending the supplemental link. The first link I got had a Google address and I could not
I
access.
think, Joe, it's, as long as you're here, that's fine. I think it must have been for a different meeting because this is what was published. So I guess, Gabriel, are you going to speak first?
I can speak, yeah.
Sean, I'm sorry.
Like, come over to-
Yeah, you're gonna have to just sit next to the mayor. We have Sean Rollins with representing PBK,
PBF Hudson.
PBF
LLC.
Hudson LLC.
Yeah.
And as you know, Madam Chair, and members of the agency and members of the public, this application was received, and maybe just give a brief overview so that anyone who hasn't been at previous meetings or have had previous exposure to your proposal and your application
Sure.
can understand and know more about the project.
So the proposed project is for the adaptive reuse and redevelopment of Pocketbook Factory to a mixed-use commercial complex. It's about 70,000 square feet of existing space. Stand up.
Louder.
Oh, and the proposal that we have before the IDA is for a pilot agreement, as well as sales tax abatement and mortgage recording tax. All of the figures that were in our application, I believe, are still current. I did forward an updated economic analysis from Victoria Stores, who's also on the call with us here. And I was hoping, if it's helpful for the board, to walk through a bit of the analysis in terms of what we're asking for and what the positive impact will be from the project. And then we also have Joseph Scott, our attorney, on the call, and he can also kind of walk us through just the nuts and bolts of what we are asking for from the IDA in terms of assistance. Just a little bit more about the project for anyone who isn't familiar. The Pocketbook Factory site has sat in disuse for at least 40 years, if not 50. And what we're proposing is bringing it back to life as a economic driver in the city, and also, I think an important piece of the urban fabric and an amenity for residents as well as visitors with the mixed-use program that we're proposing. That program includes commercial spaces that will be available for leasing, as well as a hospitality business, which we plan to own or operate, as well as public spaces and public amenities, including a large courtyard that will be available during daylight hours for anyone to use, a lounge, lots of public space, and a full historic renovation of the building. I think that's a good summary.
Would you like then to have us ask Victoria Stores to share the screen with her?
Yeah, or maybe just, Joe, would you like to kind of walk through just the nuts and bolts of our ask, and then we'll pass it to Victoria?
Sure, Sean. Well, I think frankly, you've outlined it very well, and we had a very long meeting approximately 2 weeks ago where you answered extensively the questions regarding the project. The issue here is the ask is to structure a straight lease deal, to outline the benefits or provide the benefits requested in the IDA application, as you indicated, an abatement on real property tax, sales tax exemption, and mortgage recording tax exemption. Those numbers can be outlined in more detail by Victoria in her presentation. But with respect to the structure, it's very similar to what this IDA has considered most recently, approximately 5 or 6 months ago, namely a straight lease transaction with a leasehold interest being conveyed back and forth, a pilot agreement being entered into, a clawback agreement being entered into. So from a document standpoint, this is something that the IDA has seen before, and hopefully that gives them some comfort with respect to the legal structure. And then with respect to the actual details, we can review those as outlined by Victoria in the financial analysis.
Great, thank you, Joe. Victoria?
I am going to share my screen. So thank you for inviting me to be able to do that. There are 2 screen shares that I have to support the discussion this afternoon. So the first that I'm showing you is the members, as Sean said, were provided with an updated complete report on the economic and fiscal impact. This is prepared by Camoin Associates and Stores Associates together. I've presented before, had the honor to present to this board several times over the past few years. In April of 2021, I left Camoin Associates and formed my own firm, Stores Associates. For this project, we combined our expertise. So the project team is a collaboration between both Camoin and myself, and we're happy to be here this afternoon to talk to the IDA about the Pocketbook Factory project. So the report that you have in front of you is similar to work done just by Camoin Associates when I worked there. It outlines the economic impacts, jobs, wages, and business to business and consumer spending anticipated directly as a result of the project in specific jurisdictions, Columbia County, and also the portion of the activity anticipated for the city of Hudson. It looks at the fiscal benefits just for Columbia County and specifically for the city of Hudson, and conducts a benefit cost analysis or ratio as required by the state of New York of IDAs when reviewing projects that evaluates the fiscal benefits anticipated to be received directly as a result of the project, generally sales tax and real property tax revenues that you would not otherwise be received, compared to the cost of the direct fiscal benefits or foregone revenues. In this case, the abatement of sales taxes on taxable construction materials, an exemption from mortgage tax recording, and a pilot agreement instead of straight property taxes. So I'm not going to walk through the entire report. I will bring you to the executive summary and then move to some slides that I prepared to make the outcomes more visible, because the report doesn't show especially well on a screen. The project description, you're very familiar from what Sean and Gabriel have shared with you. I talk about the purpose of the work, which is really to assist with your review. As members of the IDA, you have a responsibility, and from experience, I know that you are very thoughtful and thorough, and that's very much appreciated. The results here at the bottom of the executive summary are what I want to lead with this afternoon. We calculate a benefit cost ratio strictly for the city of Hudson itself of $6.82 of fiscal benefits for every $1 of cost or foregone revenue. And we see here in this chart that I'll show you in a larger form in a moment, that is a significantly high ratio, and that is just within the city of Hudson. The chief components, the reasons why the ratio is this high, is that there are substantial new tax revenues resulting from the construction of the project. Since the hotel portion is extremely important to the project, the city occupancy tax over a period of 10 years generates $1.2 million of tax revenues that the city would not otherwise receive. The sales tax revenue from activity within the county, allocating 13% to the city of Hudson, is over $470,000 from employees, taxes on additional taxes on room sales and food sales, and close to $800,000 of pilot payments compared with leaving the project as is and only receiving approximately $230,000 of taxes on that parcel over 10 years. To add to the brief overview, the project is anticipated to generate approximately 47 permanent jobs within the city of Hudson, with an estimated $1 million plus of annual earnings, again, within the city of Hudson. All of these numbers are bigger when you take the county into consideration, but we really want to focus first on the benefits to the city. It is also anticipated that at least 6 of the construction jobs would be filled by residents of the city of Hudson, and that's over $480,000 of earnings during the construction period. So the chart here shows the composition of the benefits and the composition of the real property of the exemption. So I'm going to stop share and pull up something that I think is easier to see. I pulled the most important charts here into PowerPoint. And that makes them much more visible. So you should be seeing the chart from the executive summary shown much larger here, the benefits to cost. So the fiscal benefits, the occupancy tax, real property tax, that's the gross real property tax, sales tax on hotel and restaurants, sales tax on worker spending is a little bit harder to see, that's about $51,000, and the IDA fee is $252,000. So we have well over $2 million in occupancy tax and real property tax, plus close to another $500,000 on top of any new additions to receipts for the city of Hudson. By comparison, the value of the real property tax exemption on a present value basis to the city and the school is $353,915 of foregone revenue. Mortgage tax recording, which is shared with the county, $56,250 in foregone revenue, and sales tax on construction materials purchased within the county, the city of Hudson share of $52,000. So this brings us to the calculation of $6.82 of benefits for every $1 in foregone costs. I'm going to pull up. The employment is extremely interesting to the IDA. So the next information that I want to show you is the anticipated impacts on employment within the city of Hudson. We talk about 2 different periods, the construction period, which is temporary. This shows the 6 anticipated jobs are all direct construction jobs. And Sean and Gabriel have talked about the wage levels and their hiring practices with you previously. The $481,000 in earnings is largely directly for those construction jobs. And as you see here, and I know this is familiar, but I want to bring everyone watching onto the same page here. when we talk about economic impact, there are three categories. Direct, these are the workers directly on site for the
Mario,
project.
can you just hold on 1 second?
Yeah,
And I think what she did is take. We not have.
We can ask for these slides
Yeah.
after.
Okay, please go ahead. We're trying to compare this to the written report, and it appears you've taken data from the written report and converted it into PowerPoint for display purposes.
exactly.
Okay, thank you.
So just to continue the overview, direct are on-site jobs. Indirect are jobs supported in the community because of business-to-business spending. For example, a retailer of construction materials will have a portion of a job to fulfill the needs of this project. And induced jobs are the supported by workers spending their money spending their earnings in the community. So for example, they are supporting grocery store workers, bank tellers. They are eating and shopping within the community. And so those are the economic ripple effects. Much more significant for the city of Hudson are the ongoing jobs, which is 47, forgive me, not 93. So 47 jobs, 42 are anticipated directly at the facility. An additional 3 jobs are anticipated to be created or supported because of the facility's economic activity and needs, and 2 jobs within the community as workers at the facility and indirect spend their money in the community. That's where we get an estimated 1 million of earnings on an annual basis, and just over 3 million in the purchase of the sales or purchase of goods and services are anticipated. So I want to pause here. Again, we've presented economic impacts before, but are there any questions about direct, indirect, and induced or ripple effect activity? All right, we can come back to that.
Do any of the agency members have questions at this point? We're set. Keep going.
Okay, great. In addition to the jobs and impact in the city of Hudson, the report very specifically shows the activity within Columbia County. But what I'd like to do is jump to the components of the financial assistance that you're being asked to request and show how these were calculated. So the project is asking for sales tax exemption on construction materials. It is asking for a mortgage tax exemption, but not surprisingly, the largest component of the financial assistance requested is a payment in lieu of taxes or pilot agreement. And this has generally been the meat of what is discussed and reviewed, and appropriately so. So I want to present the pilot as a summary and describe what the IDA is being asked to consider. So this table, which also is in the report, breaks down the results for the taxing jurisdictions expected from the pilot that the applicant is currently requesting, the Pocketbook Factory is requesting. The first half of this shows, we'll start here in gray, among all jurisdictions, real property taxes if no pilot were approved and awarded to the project. And this is purely hypothetical. PBF Hudson has stated in writing that absent the financial assistance request from the IDA, the project will not go forward. The financial assistance is essential. So we create a hypothetical scenario only to provide some clarity about what you are being asked to forego. It's a way to measure the financial assistance requested. So we calculate if the project went forward without a pilot, an anticipated $1.4 million over 10 years on a present value basis of real property taxes to all jurisdictions. The proposed pilot for all jurisdictions, county, city, and school district, comes to $992,556 over a period of 10 years, again on a present value basis. And therefore, the financial assistance or foregone revenue is measured at $441,599. It is 46% abatement. So what's important here is 992,556 anticipated to be received versus 441,599 foregone. Within each jurisdiction, the county is being asked to forego $87,684, the city of Hudson, $127,008, and the school district, which is the largest taxing component, $226,907, all over a period of 10 years. Another useful comparison is what would happen if the project were not built, if the financial assistance weren't awarded and Pocketbook Factory was not developed as envisioned. Based on the current value of the parcel and the same tax rates assumed for the pilot, we compare the pilot payments in aggregate 992,556 minus the taxes without the project. Without the project, taxes on that parcel are just over $450,000 over a period of 10 years. That's $89,431 to the county, $129,538 to the city of Hudson, and $237,427 to the school district, compared with receiving instead pilot payments of $992,556. So as a result of the project being built with the pilot assistance, all of the jurisdictions together are gaining $542,160 of tax revenue, otherwise not available. And that's $107,651 for the county, $155,930 for the city, and $278,579 for the school district. This is part of why we see an excess of benefits over costs of financial assistance, because even with the pilot, a significant amount of new tax revenue is received compared with having no development on that parcel. I break this down a little bit. This is information about how the calculation was made, our basic assumptions for the request for the pilot, using an assessed value from the appraisal of $6,050,000, a fixed aggregate tax rate of 26.39. We estimate the full taxes if the project were built and assessed and taxed at this rate at $159,660 annually. We apply a discount schedule that's percent of FT or full taxes. So in year 1 and 2, 50% of full taxes are anticipated, and that percentage rises in every year, so that every year the project moves toward payment of full taxes in year 11. And consequently, all of the jurisdictions receive increased tax payments as the pilot payments increase every year. And the final column shows the savings to the project to support project completion and operation. A version of this table is in the report. Because the experience of each jurisdiction is especially important, especially for the city and the school district, for the city of Hudson, I've broken down in the report and shown here the effects on the individual jurisdictions. So with a total pilot payment of gross value 1,117,617, and that 992,556 as a present value, these are gross payments anticipated to be received. So for example, in year 1, the total pilot payment is estimated at 79,830. The county, based on the current tax rates and proportion of total taxes, would receive 15,851. The city of Hudson would receive 22,959, and the school district would receive 41,019 from the pilot payment. And these add up to the present value numbers shown on the previous slide. I will go back to the full report with my screen share.
Is that the end of it? Thank you.
I'm pulling up the report and we'll open it up for questions.
Are there any questions from agency members?
Thus far, I don't think so. Thank you.
Heather Campbell has a question.
Oh, okay, Heather.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if I look at the pilot payment estimated for each jurisdiction, and we've got the city portion being 321,000 on the last chart that you showed. How does that relate to the 795,000 pilot payments on page 1 of the report in the executive summary?
Did you hear her? Because I couldn't hear you.
The question relates to the total on page 1 benefit to the city. Can you go to page 1 of the report, Victoria?
Yes, yes, and actually, let me find a little bit more detail here.
What page is the
11.
the question relates specifically to a difference in number on page 11 and page 1 as it relates to the benefit that goes to the city of Hudson.
Specifically the pilot payments.
Specifically the pilot payment. So if we could limit
Yes.
your response to those questions.
Specifically to the pilot payments, what I'm showing on page 1 is the city of Hudson plus the school district.
Right, but you should, so you've combined them
Yes,
on page 1 and on page 15, you've broken them out.
yes,
So then the city portion and the school portion would be 895. Is that what the number is on page 1?
795.
795?
The net present value does look like that adds. I just don't know
Yeah.
why we would look at the city and
Yeah.
school together. I'd rather think we look at city, county, and school together.
Right.
You know, city alone.
All right. So yeah, I mean, the city and the school are separate legal entities. And
Yep.
so-
Yeah, they absolutely are. And it's strictly for the executive summary that I combined them. There isn't room. It stops being an executive summary. So page 15 is where you want to see the chart that we just discussed that I had in the larger format and the details per jurisdiction.
Michael, can I ask you?
Are there any other questions?
Council has a question. Hold on.
Chair. So, I think it's a good point that in the executive summary, we're showing a benefit cost ratio of 6.82. I think we need to be consistent when we give a notice to the taxing jurisdictions, when we explain what the cost benefit ratio is. We need to be consistent and clear about what we're talking about there. So I think it would be helpful to make sure that we all understand which cost benefit ratio is proposed to be presented as the X to 1 ratio.
But
Michael, maybe you have a recommendation on.
But with respect to your question, I think the issue I see is that there is a real dollar benefit that can be derived from the table above this one, table 18. Because that to me is where the benefit is. I think that clearly when you go to the next table and you see the assumptions that are made with respect to some of the analysis. I guess it's page 19 that I was thinking of, where if you stop right there, I'm sorry, Victoria. Yeah, not page 19, table
19.
I think that this is where it really comes out, and I'm not really sure how this relates to your question, Chris.
I was gonna ask, had this question, was it answered? Because with this 10-year projection, is there anything that indicates what would bring in each year, and rather than overall 10 years?
Yeah, there are tables in the back of the analysis that would show how it was calculated for these summary tables, which we can be sure are there if they're not.
So let me walk you through this section of the report from which you'll be deriving the numbers.
Let's get back to Chris's question. And have we answered the chair's question?
What you described, Mike Tucker, is it in this packet?
Well, I know at one point there was a summary chart, and perhaps it was in the last. Yes, if you go to page, could you pull up table 17, Victoria?
Yes, can you see it?
This is how you get to the 10-year summary page.
Thank you.
Now, if you go back, what this proposal mirrors is the 620 Union Street percentage exemptions. And my question was, how did you get to the 6 million, or how did you get to the assessed value that you used to do these calculations?
Sure. The assessed value was from an appraisal that we had commissioned from Concord and Associates, which looked in great detail, and we provided to the board.
And it is online.
It is online on the uses in the building, basically considering the hotel portion of the building and the commercial side of the building, and looking at comparables in the area and deriving values based on that approach, because there's kind of two distinct uses: a commercial space that's available for lease, and then a owner-operated hospitality venture.
And I think when we the appraisal on 620 Union, I think was 3.25 million, and this is double that. So that gives a perspective of the fact that I think your building is 70,000 square feet. I think they were 50,000 when they were all done.
Yeah, and they were a few more. I think there are 50 keys, and we're 40 keys.
Chris, could you restate your question? I wasn't quite following it.
Really, just when we explain, I was keying off of Heather's question. In one part of the report, it combines the city and school numbers to come up with a cost benefit ratio. In another part, we break them out individually and then come up with a regional. Although I will note that the regional one takes into account the IDA fee, which does not actually go to the city, which probably shouldn't be Victoria shown on the city's impact because the city doesn't receive that.
I think one of the reasons we are in this, that's a very good point. The state law only requires that we do a regional analysis, but this agency had asked when we were going through the previous pilot analysis to break it down by each of the taxing jurisdictions. I think that if you're looking at it as a regional benefit as opposed to dollars going in the city's bank account, certainly the pilot fee goes to the public benefit of the city residents.
Well, I think that all I'm really saying is I think we need to be clear about what we're presenting when we're explaining to the public what is being proposed. So if we're going to use the regional approach, I think that's okay. I myself would argue with putting the IDA fee in the city column.
Right.
I don't think I would.
Well, you could put it in a separate column
It's in
showing
the
that
regional.
it's a benefit.
Well, you
It's
can
in the
put it in
regional
the
column,
regional
it's
column
fine.
and take it out
It
of the
just
city.
doesn't belong in the city column, that's my point. But then the overall, what you'd be presenting then is the overall 7.27 cost benefit number, because that's the regional benefit that you're typically going to use. Is that correct? That's what I want to be clear about. What is it that
I
is
think-
appropriate to present?
I think it's appropriate to present it as in as much detail as possible. And I do think that if you, either pulled the regional benefit, put the IDA fee in the regional benefit or created a column for city IDA benefit, that you could see that put it in the regional benefit makes it seem like it's going to benefit Albany County or Rensselaer County or Columbia or Greene County. But I do think, for the IDA on a project of this size, what is the fee is $250,000. IDAs can do things to help the city develop abandoned property. I mean, not that the agency is independent and doesn't have to do what is asked, but there is public input as to how that money gets spent within the city of Hudson. So it does have, it's not a direct benefit to the city bank accounts, but I think that perhaps there was a column for the IDA, and if just as people were looking at whether someone's going to buy a cup of coffee at the construction site from the mobile truck, adding their sales tax in. I think that's kind of fluff compared to the $250,000 in cash that the city of Hudson IDA, whose city council appoints its members, is getting. So, I mean, it's money that the city is benefiting from. When I say city, I mean the boundaries of the city, if not the city of Hudson bank account. I think there's a direct benefit to the city.
Yeah.
We all have opinions.
Yeah, I'd rather see it taken out of this.
Yeah, if it can come out of the city, it shouldn't be compared to the city tax dollars because it's not in that
Correct.
column.
But I don't have an issue with keeping it in the region. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think in the region, it would make the public think that the city of Hudson IDA, who is a public benefit corporation for the residents of the city of Hudson, are sharing it with somebody else.
Well, true, but otherwise you're gonna have to get into a whole thing and get all the direct and indirect benefits.
Oh, I take those, I throw those out.
So-
Victoria gets upset with me when I throw those out because they're intangible, but they're real, they're there. But I don't know that anyone can put a realistic value on them. Comes down to me, it's, how many dollars in versus how many dollars out that you can calculate. And I'm not diminishing the multiple, it's well proven theory that a dollar invested has a trickle down effect. If you're staying at the hotel and you go down the street to the restaurant instead of eating in the hotel restaurant, you're creating a leveraged economic benefit from the investment. But
That's what this whole.
If I may, this is what I would recommend, and I will confirm it with Sean. Most of the IDAs that I work with don't ask that the upfront fee be included in the benefit cost analysis. So to be very clear about that fee, what I can do is take it out of this chart. There will be a very small decrease in the benefit cost ratios, but I will add into an additional benefit is the 250 to the IDA, which it can use for the purposes of its mission. So to be clear that it's a benefit, but take it out of that calculation so that you don't find yourself explaining, to the authority's budget office, for
Doesn't
example.
displace the loss to the city's tax
Yeah,
revenue, as your point.
Agreed. And the only other thing is I would definitely change the executive summary to either show all three individual ratios plus the blended ratio, or just have the blended ratio, but having the school and city combined is just weird. No offense.
Mhm. I can do that.
Sorry.
Oh, that's good.
No, it's
And then,
great. It's
Michael-
helpful feedback. I'm happy to make
To
adjustments.
just finish this up, so in the presentation that you had circulated, you have specific things in here, including the construction earnings, sales tax, and hotel tax and whatnot. But you didn't have some of the other indirect benefit issues. So I just want to be clear about which version of this are we presenting
Well, this-
as
my-
our calculation of what the benefit is.
My version was more to prove that their numbers weren't, didn't have errors.
Understand, but I just want to make sure I'm clear about what we're, at the end of the day, what are we showing? Are we showing these numbers with the breakdown so that people can understand what they're being told? Maybe, maybe we're just going to attach this table 19.
Could we receive that clarification from what the attorney is suggesting?
Well, we certainly would be able to do that before the November 3rd meeting and before the agency considered whether to schedule a public hearing.
Yeah.
And that way, the public hearing notice would have the appropriate detail as Chris Schell and Heather Campbell are recommended.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from the board? I'm sorry I couldn't be there to see your hands being raised. And thank you, Mike, for letting me know who is. Are there any other questions from the board?
I have a comment or an observation, if I might.
Please.
Thank you, Tiffany. Just curious, in terms of the proposed pilot, whether you considered increasing either A, the assessed value over time, or B, the tax rate, because I'll tell you right now, both of them are not going to stay flat for 10 years. And my concern with that is that you end up in a situation where your jump from year 10 to year 11 is exponentially larger than you anticipated.
So I believe,
I did, in this analysis, I did
know.
that because they had, I know that I believe we had calculated that into the previous plan.
And my reasoning was just to not make assumptions that I couldn't back up. So I used I used the data that we had from the appraisal we did and then the current tax rates. And, we're obviously here to work with you. So we'd look for your response or recommendations.
so I was under the impression that what I was reading is that it was actual tax rates, but fixed assessment is what was being proposed. Is that not correct?
Not according to table
Well,
16.
this is an assumption, right?
Yeah.
Analysis.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at the proposal
Well, I think-
on page 10, and it's
I think
both flat as far as I can tell, right?
I think what we did previously was we had the application, we reviewed it. The agency members had a presentation on the financial impact report as we just did. Then the package was put out to a public hearing. And after the public hearing, this board made those changes in response to what we had heard.
I don't.
No, we had the conversation ahead of time to understand what the nature of the pilot was. And so I think it's a fair question to make sure that we all understand, is the pilot proposed to be, we understand the pilot's proposed to be, and maybe Joe can help us here, a fixed assessed value for that 10-year pilot period, correct, Joe? Madam Chair, with your permission.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'll let Sean weigh in on this, but my understanding is that we have an appraisal report showing what the appraised value or what the assessed value of the facility as constructed is going to be, and we would like to use that in the pilot agreement.
But as to tax rates, the tax rates, as Heather indicates, will go up over time. So the proposal is to apply the tax rates, whatever they are. Is that correct?
That's not what's in the current, correct me if I'm wrong, that's not what's in the current proposed pilot, but I think it's something that we should consider.
And I think that not knowing what those would be, they used a 2% escalator for an example.
For an example.
Yeah.
Because it is hard to plan in Hudson with the amount of change and growth and renovations. And, you know, it's a really hard thing to put a number on. So
Can you speak up a little bit, please?
consistent.
Yeah, I understand.
And I guess the question really is even presenting a escalator, a pilot that has an escalator. For example purposes, you have to pick a percentage because you can't, some years it'll go down. Potentially. If you're in Rensselaer County.
Well, no,
That's a
that's
good one,
actually
Mike.
true. There are people who are reducing their tax rates right now where the assessment's going up. So the rates could actually go down.
Right.
The county's actually
Yeah.
thinking it's gonna go down 80%. but-
Yeah. It'd be hard to believe, and currently, you know, what cities are going through, and the infrastructure that needs to be upgraded and replaced, and the services that are necessary to sustain quality of life. It's hard to imagine they would, but if the assessment, presumably when you have a reassessment, there's some relationship in adjustments to rates at some level.
Well, and just increased number of properties on the tax roll, which is a trend in Hudson, right? You would know better.
Noticeably, I don't think. But the assessed values.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
That caused, I'm sorry, and that caused, so assessed values went up. We did a reval a few years ago, but that has both the impact of dropping the mill rate entirely because we're at full assessed value, but it also had the impact of some people's taxes getting significantly higher and some people's taxes actually dropping because some people's assessments did not change significantly and other people's changed substantially, so.
So again, I think it is useful to have a clear presentation today of what the applicant is looking for in terms of the pilot structure.
Joe or Sean?
I mean, I think what is assumed on, we're basically looking at the difference between what's on page 10 and on page, what's the other page that we were comparing it to with the 2%?
I don't think that's in here, is it? I don't
No.
think we have one in here.
No.
That's the question.
So I think the safe thing to assume is what we are presenting is what is on page 10, and then we would be looking for a response from the IDA.
So are you saying that you want to fix both tax assessment and tax rate?
That's what they're proposing.
That's what we're proposing.
Okay, that's not what I understood. So
Well,
that's why we asked the question.
yeah,
Yep, and I think that's what's in our
that's within
application.
their application.
It's not ever clear in the application, which is why we asked the question, because an application is always based on assumptions. So,
Well, I think at one point we had discussed here in another context, you know, should the assessment and the rate be increased at 2%? And the argument against doing one or the other was that with the governor's 2% cap, you'd never get, the city would never be able to achieve that for any government entity. So you could either increase the assessment by 2% and leave the rate flat, or you could leave the assessment fixed and increase the rate. And then is 2% over 10 years the right number, or is it, 4%? That's where it's hard to.
but whichever, but right now you're proposing that it's flat.
But that's up to the members of the agency to, I guess, either direct the developer now or put it out to public hearing and adjust it when you.
Well, it sounds like the board isn't comfortable with the example. So what, 'cause I can barely hear you guys, so I'm sorry if you said it already. But what do we need to do so that the board is comfortable moving forward with for a public hearing? Because it sounds like from what I gathered, that the example is not something we should base our decisions on, that we need something a little more concrete. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, if we use Madam Chair, if we use a fixed payment, which is one way of doing pilots, then we remove all the rest of the fluff and the percentages and just put a certain dollar amount down each year. That's what is being proposed. The percentages were used to derive that number based on a fixed assessment. But then what you would do is you would present $79,000, $95, 111. Those are the numbers that you would put down as the proposed pilot payments, and those would be fixed, period, no matter what.
But they would have been based on the accepting the assessment, leaving it flat, using current tax rates, and either leaving them flat or escalating.
This is their proposal is just based on a flat tax rate and a flat assessment.
I did an analysis of showing that the assessment if the assessment stayed flat and the tax rate went up 2%, and I just have this in my notes, that the present value would go from their proposal of $442,000 present value to $470. So it's a $30,000 present value over 10 years.
And if that makes the board more comfortable, we're happy to update our application. I just look to you for guidance on the right process for when and how to do that.
Would the board be comfortable with that?
Madam Chair, if I may,
One second, Joe. What I believe that was Sean that said that. Think about that and let's hear what Mr. Scott has to say. Joe?
I think the critical thing for the public, the critical issue for the public hearing is to have something for the public to talk about. Not having any pilot structure for the public hearing would be potentially, in my view, problematic.
I don't
So-
think anyone's suggesting that.
I'm not suggesting that anyone is suggesting that, Chris. But what I'm concerned about is that people are focusing on reaching some sort of agreement at this meeting on the terms. What we could use is what's on the table right now, which Sean has described as a fixed assessed value, fixed tax rates with the varying percentages. And we float that. That doesn't bind the IDA to that structure, but at least it puts us all in a position to move forward on a public hearing, which I think is everyone's desired result.
Either way, the agency members would take into account whatever input there is from a public hearing before they make a vote. So I guess
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the whole essence of the public hearing and why it's important to have a pilot structure so that the public has something to comment on and so that the members have something to respond to.
When?
Madam Chair?
Yes,
I don't know how you would like to lead us at this
when
point.
is the next public,
The next IDA meeting is November 3rd, 2 weeks from today.
when is the next planning meeting?
The next planning board meeting, I believe, is the second Tuesday, so the 11th or 12th of.
Okay.
Let me pull it up.
And you told us earlier you did receive the negative secret declaration.
We did, and we're awaiting the resolution for that this week, and I will forward that.
And what's the remaining issues before the planning board?
To my knowledge, there are very few issues remaining before the planning board. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any, actually. I think it's more process. And
A lot of it was covered in secret.
yeah, like
Okay.
all of the.
I was just thinking, you telling us when the meeting was that you were planning to have to be there. So,
I believe it's the 9th November 9th, Tuesday. 6 p.m.
November 9th.
So the agency could, council, presumably meet as
And wait till after the,
on the 3rd and consider a resolution.
The neg deck, Madam Chair, the neg deck's already been adopted, so that means the IDA's action can proceed as the IDA chooses. It does not, it no longer needs to await further decision by the planning board. Of course, that's up to you.
and Mike, what did you say?
Council said that because of the planning board issuing the negative deck under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, that the IDA does not have to wait for further planning board action before proceeding in any way, in any fashion it desires, whether to approve or a public hearing, whether to approve the project after a public hearing. The seeker portion of the project has been approved because this agency selected the planning board as the lead agency, or the lead agency. The planning board designated itself as the lead agency.
I would like to hear from the members, but I think that we should hear from the planning board first before we move forward with the public hearing.
And you expect to have that this week, written?
Yep, the resolution I will share this week. I think they said it should be available. They said by today, by Wednesday. So I'll check in on it, but it is in the record with the planning board and on the video recording as well.
I think we get approved with some conditions.
I can't hear who spoke, if anyone is
Sorry.
talking from the board.
John Cody was mentioning that the planning board had some conditions on the approval, but they were not insurmountable.
Right. Yeah, very small, like proper signage for parking, sound, hiring a sound engineer to look at the courtyard, very reasonable asks that we plan to meet all of those conditions, but the negative declaration was issued.
Anyone else from the board has any?
Yes,
comment?
Madam Chair, is your question whether to approve the public hearing resolution at this point?
Yes.
I don't think the assessor is on the call, but Mr. Wallace, do you have any input on this?
I can't hear him. Did he say anything?
Not yet. Richard?
Is he on Zoom?
We're checking. He was initially.
Well, if there aren't, I guess we can schedule the public hearing.
Are you still on the call, Richard?
Is Richard on the phone? Mr. Wallace?
Richard?
I'm here.
Okay. I don't know if you are able to hear. We have you on a cell phone because we can't hear you on the Zoom, but we know you're on the Zoom.
Okay, yeah, no, actually, I was on the speakerphone, but unfortunately I had it on mute. It took me a while to get off. I'm sorry.
Because you're remote, we wanted to be sure that we got your opinion on whether to go forward now or wait till the November 3rd meeting with the public hearing request to get that process started. It's ministerial action, basically, not any decision as to approve or disapprove of the project.
Right, right. Well, there's no reason we shouldn't move forward, is there?
No.
Madam Chair,
Well, then let's schedule a public hearing.
the treasurer has raised her hand. Would you recognize her, please?
Yes, Heather.
I would like to make a motion that we accept the resolution to create a public hearing for PDF Hudson LLC.
I'll
Do
second.
we have a second to that motion?
I will, John.
All right. All in favor for this motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposes? Moving forward with the scheduling for a public hearing.
Just to be clear, as we discussed, that includes the fixed pilot schedule that was presented in the application. Yes.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Council indicated that the resolution would include the fixed schedule that's in the application without any changes at this point from the IDA.
For the purpose of the public hearing.
Just for the notice, and then the public can respond in that process as to what their thoughts are on escalators.
Agreed. Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the public? If there aren't any questions from the public that will indicate with their digital hand raised or raising their hands with the cameras on, and if there aren't any other questions from the board or from the guests, may I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved. John.
May I have a second to that motion? Who was that?
Seconded by the mayor.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? 2:12 meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Hi, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Making my first thing.
Turn this off.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
I think that's useful.
I think it's helpful. See you later.
Bye,
Bye,
thank
Heather.
you.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, so then what I've got here is fixed payments.
Yeah.
Commencing in the first year following the year of construction completion, passes prior to installing project based on the actual assessment and tax rates. Tax rates. Same thing. Yeah, well, you can just send it to me. I just want something I can prove from it. Okay, so the first 2 years, I'm just using this exact schedule. This is what I'm doing. So this is the one that's exhibit C, right, in the pilot, or in the application. So they've got 79,830 in the first 2 years, right? And they've got 95,796 in the second, 11,762, 28, and then 143,694. And I'm not putting a number here because this is actual tax rate. I mean, that's my understanding. I don't think we're fixing year 11 because they're asking for a 10-year pilot, I believe. So, well, that's what I'm assuming. So, Michael, we're doing the 11th year. Okay, so you're all set?
I'm all set.
Bless you.
Thank you.
You are doing, in the 11th year, it's actual, just actual. And it is correct to say that this doesn't start until construction right? Because
Yeah.
if I don't say it,
You gotta
I'm
say,
gonna go back around.
yeah,
and
go
around,
through that
right?
all over again.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
And
I know
what-
that's okay.
And what I'm looking at is, they're not gonna like it, but I'm looking at taking their building and putting it into two uses. One, give them the double 50% exemption, the 620 Union Street on the 40 hotel rooms prorated, and taking the balance of the space and giving them no deviation on the commercial and the commercial office space. You know what I'm
You
saying?
mean giving it a 50, 60, 70 instead of 50, 50, 60?
No.